Now, our next poet hardly needs any introduction. John F. Deane. Achill proudly claims John F. as its premier poet, who has published several volumes of poems since the 1970s. He's also written a number of novels. His creative energy is undimmed as he starts into his 9th decade. Familiar to many from his readings on Sunday Miscellany, John F. is inspired by childhood memories of his school days in the monastery at Bunnacurry. Christian religious themes are frequently interwoven in his work, evoking a landscape where the spiritual and material worlds come together. John is a member of Eostona. He is the founder of Poetry Ireland, the National Poetry Society, and the Poetry Ireland Review. He is also founder of the Daedalus Press. He has received a number of awards for outstanding contribution to the arts in Ireland. I'm not sure about the Patrick Kavanagh Award. I've been looking and searching. He was also made a Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres by the French government in 2007. And importantly for Achill, John was one of the prime movers in negotiating and establishing the Achill Heinrich Böll Association and Artists' Residency in 1992, for which we thank you again, John. So, without further ado, I'll ask John to take the stand and read from his most recent book, Jonah and Me, and other works.
I want to start in a very simple way by thanking both the people and the place that I love so well. You have been, Achill Island people, you have been very supportive of my efforts down the years, from being a short-legged, bold boy down in Bunnacurry school to being a bald-headed owl fella coming back and speaking to you. So I want to thank you as a people for the invitations, the kindness, the love that you have shown me. I am very grateful for it. I also want to thank the Heinrich Böll committee for putting up with me and having the bravery to bring me back, even though I did not, etc., when Patrick had. This book is called Jonah and Me, and I'm going to stick with it apart from one poem. It's a new one, a new book. It came out last December, and I'm pleased with it. I think I'm beginning to learn how to write poems and getting a little bit better. But time is catching up with me, so I'm going to start with a poem which is called The Tide Going Out. On Bunnacurry shore, the tide going out, I stand a little stooped under the heaviness of years, somewhat slow of breath, weighed like rippled sand under streels of weed. Amongst the rocks, I have come upon new wonders, the brittle bone debris and the feather mash of some unidentifiable seabird. I have learned there is no pleasure found in the loss of any created thing. Even the individual gnat within the scrawling vast tornado of gnats has its own world wisdom, born in time and in time will die. Small green crabs lurk among tiny and sideways hurtling sandhoppers where I paddle, soothing my bones in the forgiving waters of ocean. But do not ask me to speak of the wisdom of old men, for it is pooled in the stony flesh of the heel and in the heart. In Bunnacurry, where I was born and reared, my grandfather, Lord rest him, had a clock, which he used to wind up once a week, and he was given it in 1916 as an honour for doing something or other with the RIC, believe it or not. He died, and I was gifted the Cornish carriage clock. And it's written, I wind it up every day, every week since, and it is still going, since 1916. From number 3 squad, 2nd Rifle Class in Dollymount in 1916. So this, in fact, is not about my grandfather, it is about my grandmother and the clock. There is a time for war, the big book says, and she was intimate with war, each with its seasons, evening and serving the interests of the small, whimpering gods. She was intimate, too, with death, her missal swollen with cards, sons, daughters, husband, the dead with their smiling faces, with their dispatches from beyond where love and violets thrive. When grandfather died, she let the carriage clock, with her expectations, wind down and stop. This, too, is love. O sleeping Lord, do you not see, do you not hear how we hurt? Now, when I write, or while I write, a winter storm is complaining in the chimney, and I have been gifted the carriage clock, have wound it up again, inheriting its ticking, its ritual remembering, the sorrow, the righteousness, and the love. When I was growing up, my brother Declan was the good boy, and I was the black sheep. But we got on so well together. Maybe that's the thing that the good boys and the bad boys do. They get on well together. I did the bad things and got the punishment. He did the good things and got the praise. But we loved each other. Our greatest joy was to climb Slievemore up here from down this side, which is reasonably accessible, up to the tip top, and then to come skittering and flying down this side, which we did very, very well. And this is on the mountain high. In the beginning was nothing. Nothing orthodox, nothing unorthodox. Only the pure point of utterness, out of which all things are disposed. Still, from the mountaintop, you could see the everything. South, the island villages, the fields and the wildscapes, teeming life. East, the mainland, its confusing folds and fallows, its humped horizons. To the west, the ocean, stunning in its wilderness and bounty. The ruck of islands vanishing in haze. And north, Atlantic boundlessness, beyond and beyond. The mesmerizing dance of distances and the harmony of things that are not. But if you stood carefully, holding your balance and looking up, you could see the clouds, the heavens and the cosmos, the possibility of worlds past worlds beyond thinking. We, brothers and young companions, already were relishing breezes about our ears, and at the high whistle of a kestrel in the blues above, that were sliding towards silver. So we stretched our arms wide, encompassing the island, our care and holding, and then set off, down and down, air inebriated, the leaps, the falls, the laughter, he and I, fresh water and blood grouped, never to be separated. We immortals. And how wonderful it would be to soar out, sustained on the broad arms of utterness, together, over the waves, to be filled full, to be made whole. With Paddy Lineen and Declan and myself, we were a threesome up to no good. We built a boat made of this and that and the other, and we called it the Half Safe. And we launched it out on Loch na Deane, behind the house in Bunnacurry. Loch na Deane, I was told, means the lake of the little birds. But if you say it slightly differently, Loch na Deane or something, I believe it means the lake of the sweet singing birds. And I like that. Anyway, this poem is about Declan and myself together when Declan would have been 14, 15 and was thinking of heading for the priesthood. And I was still poking around in Bunnacurry School, maybe 6th class. And we were together on the boat out on the lake one particular day, which I would never forget. And this little small poem is simply called The Unheard Music. And then, in our sleeky homemade boat out on the lake, we both fell silent. The oars lifted and dripping water on the surface, softly. Something incomprehensible holding us. Fragrance breathing from the heathers. The low hills embracing, and lake water tapping gently against the timber bones of the craft. We drifted, a long, sustaining moment in unannounced communion, as childhood drew nearer to the rough rock shores, and our leaning bodies grew firmer towards the tasks ahead, until we rowed again, oars raking against the rowlocks, silence persisting deep within us, swelling to a form of prayer. He died 2010 out in California. So our lives drifted very sadly, very far apart. But he remained a great guy. Now this book is called Jonah and Me. Jonah, as you all know, is the story of Jonah and the whale. Jonah being the prophet. I have a very strong theory, those who like theories, that poets and prophets are one and the same. That every good poet is a prophet, and vice versa. Every good prophet is a poet. You just have to think of Jonah disobeying God. Think of Ezekiel and the beautiful thing where he's out in the desert and he sees all these bones scattered over the desert. And God says to him, Ezekiel, shall these bones live? And Ezekiel says, I don't know. You tell me. Shall these bones live? And they do. And he resurrects the bones, which is prophecy of the past. Then you've got Isaiah, a beautiful poet of the future and the coming of the virgin birth and all that thing. So a good poet stands between this world and the transcendent and tries to interpret the beyond, not necessarily the future, but the beyond to the present. Anyway, that has absolutely nothing got to do with this poem. I had originally written Jonah and I, and being a good, well-taught Bunnacurry boy, Jonah and I is the correct grammar. But it sounds wrong, Jonah and me, because in this poem, Jonah is the donkey that we had in Bunnacurry, that I used to go up the bogs to collect the turf in. Jonah, the prophet, disobeyed God. As you know, went the wrong direction, and then was swallowed by a whale when he was trying to escape, and the whale spat him out. And so he said, oh, feck it, I've got to go and do what God said. And he went off and told the fellas in Nineveh that God was coming to blast them. Anyway, this is my donkey, Jonah, and me. I was reading in the big book about Balaam's donkey, about Elisha and Naaman, the leper, cured. And I was reading about gratitude. And I thought of Jonah, my Bunnacurry mule, big and raw, stubborn in hardship and unwilling, insistent in calling out from his knowledge of the world, wise in his own way as Solomon. We stood together, wearied, out on the wide spaces of the bogland, honey scent of heather on the breeze, in a quietude that could be prayer. The high dome of the sky, these days it is so, was a mystic blue, and somewhere in the low growth of rush and scrub, a pipit sang. Beyond the ridge of the low hills, the Atlantic Ocean sounded in soft, regular shushing of the breakers, like a breathful hymn of praise. It was as if we were standing alone in the first church. We, the first worshippers, awed and wordless. I had filled the sunny creels on either side of Jonah, from the footings dried in the sun, where the peat-thickened water wallowed dark from the deep veins of earth. And we started back, Jonah and me, good companions. The bog road was rough with stone and sorrow, and we, Jonah and me, moved in a slow, uncomely, cosmic dance of bemused fellowship. And we stopped. I took 2 sods from either creel and carried them to ease his load, thanking him and flinging away my stick. Kindly I laid my hand on the unshaven and twitching rump and sensed the stone-like bones of his spine. And then we carried on, Jonah and me, towards our Nineveh. Those are all great poems. They're good poems. I like them. But you know what they are? They are lyric poems. And we are not living in times of lyricism. And I have been challenging myself over the years to try and write a poem that speaks more roughly what I believe in my heart and soul is going on in the world at the moment. And if you will indulge me, I would like to read a difficult poem, a poem that comes from not just from the imagination, the head, and all of that, but from the absolute marrow of my bones about the world as it stands at the moment. It's ever so slightly long, but it's a story, it's a movement. And it begins in the Bervie, not so long ago when I was down there. And I tried to pray one day quietly, and I couldn't manage it because the world was intruding into my mind. So I set out to walk Keel Beach from there over to the cliffs. And my head goes as I go along. And it's in 3 parts and 3.5 parts. 3.5 parts brings me to the Killeen down there, so you will recognise when I get there. I need to read this poem because it relieves me of using bad language, which doesn't affect any great things in the world. W.H. Auden said, foolishly once I think, well, he was foolishly interpreted it, where he says, poetry makes nothing happen. And everybody quotes that. And they don't go on with the rest of it. And he says, it survives in the minds of men and in the valleys of humanity, where it moves the intellect of other people. Poetry makes nothing happen, but it survives and works deep down. So maybe this might do something enlightened. It's called A Prayer to the One. Seeking peace, I was on the island, world in turmoil, and I, agitated, was still finding sleep elusive. And so, morning, still dark, I entered the prayer room, shut the door, settled myself to ease towards stillness. But my mind was a cove cluttered with flotsam, where the sea came pounding and withdrawing. You, not to be found. I went out onto the foreshore, yielding. In pre-dawn dimness, there was a sickle moon, for here at the edge, in a late spring day, it may dawn unwillingly. I climbed over a bulwark of piled boulders onto the strand, a winter chill still holding, tide water shivering in the breezes, and out the immeasurable Atlantic, and in the far distance the shapes of islands like shadows. I walked, hoping still that you, source and sustenance, might touch my being to understanding. Here I could avoid the allure of traffic out on the road, perhaps suppress those iterating whispers under familiar skies, but I could not avoid the images, I could not avoid the images of opulence in that far-off white mansion where, in the oval office with its fool's gold, the schoolyard bully, bottom of the class, hunched in expanding ego at the resolute desk, scrawling his signature, creepy lines like a concertina serpent, executive orders for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, designing mischief on the poor and the oppressed. But oh, just one, I cannot bear it. Listen, those are the cries of gull and guillemot, a harsh and natural music, beautiful. I shrugged my defeated spirit deeper into my coat and tried again to find stillness deep within me. Mercy, I prayed, on this aging flesh, still stirring, sighing, O divine breath before you. The long-loved beach stretching in a sweet, delaying curve before me. Gullies and streamlets crossing from the sandy banks to the sea. I stood listening to the soothing, irregular breaking of the waves. to the distant barking of a small dog, to the bleating of sheep on the heather slopes of the mountains, and there I would discern your voice, Divine One. I would hold you in a heart of love, but I am fickle as the froth on the wind-swept waves. I know that you, merciful one, were watching me, slight and insignificant figure as I moved along the beach, under the immensity of sky and sea and mountain range. I was enthralled by the flight of a tern out over the sea, that small, gracious bird, its deadly arrow flash of white into the sea. Then flight again, a small light squirming in that blood-red bill. Gentle one, I have prayed, pleaded, begged for the children of Gaza, for the mothers, for the ragged, unhoused families with nowhere left to run, and I have wept as if you are not listening. And see, here by the cliffs, the cathedral rocks have collapsed upon themselves. Arches and columns crashed like the rugged faith of old. But this is in the nature of a cosmic compulsion. The ruins lie washed by the waves, and crustaceans cover them. But in Gaza, Israel's steel-souled cruelty has razed the homes of the innocent and guilty, a bloody devastation. I thought that we, begotten of light, had left to the darkness of ages this pillaging and razing. For the war thunder has been raking through the Psalms, obliterating the Song of Songs. Forgive me, but ours is an age of a self-seeking brutality, and I cannot bear it. You saw how I knelt on the sand, a stench lifting where I knelt. There were flies, their backs an emerald incandescence, buzzing noisily on the manifold kelp, and seaweeds rotting in the long, staggering line that marks high tide. I made a poem once and wrote, "Let the children play." But now I see so many, eyes dead, they bleed, they root with the dogs among the rubble. I thought of the child who fled from an earlier and more inept Herod into Egypt. Let the children play. Let them breathe with the sea thrift blooming on the cliff ledge. But let us not forget the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank. I cannot, gentle one, I cannot bear it. I watched a while out over the wild and bewildering Atlantic. On the horizon, the islands rose clearer in the brightening day, and out beyond our world, that vast and incomprehensible cosmos, and we, specks of dust, innumerable, where I stood, here by the cliffs. There is a high bank of sand and sward eroded by the centuries, guarding the secret graves of the stillborn and unbaptized children, whose eyes never opened on a world that had rejected them. Elohim, we are before our birth and nothingness, waiting in some ocean of pre-existence, waiting till we are washed at last into life. And then we grow through our deeps and shallows. We suffer the little deaths, and then we are swept back into silence, bearing our fardels of being and grace, part of it, portion of the holiness. For you will gather unto yourself all things, and nothing will have been lost. And then I walked on more slowly, the sun being risen, and now I had reached the cliffs, and I was gazing up in awe at those dark, commanding faces. At their feet, somewhat daunted, I felt alone in the world. I felt the world alone in me. I would empty my mind of sorrows, into the salt purity of the air, where I am but one grace note in the symphony of growth around me, seeking to discern that still small voice within the works of love. And then I remembered that out there, beyond the islands, there is another predator, part of it too, that suave, criminal vampire, accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity. I see him glide, bat-like, through those high doors of fool's gold, pugnacious, dwarfed in being by his greed for domination, thug and ageless backyard bully. But again, beloved, forgive me. I am failing in patience, and I beg for the mercy you have promised us. I touched the cold face of the cliffs, inhaled the soft breathing of cosmos, the now of eternal you, and I prayed you hear me in spite of sin and dust, in spite of faint-heartedness and fear. I have wearied myself with an awareness of the horrors of war, the suffering of the children. O you who are nothing and nowhere, intimate and distant, you who are all in all and everywhere, you silent one, I cannot bear it. Teach me to pray. Teach me to trust. Amen, amen, I cried out. O Christ, our Christ, amen. I thank you for letting me come.